Hello and good evening, good afternoon, wherever you are in the world. Welcome to another session on COVID-19. I am Dr. Philip Macmillan. I'm a physician in the United Kingdom, and my research on COVID-19 is all about autoimmunity. The fact that severe COVID-19 is a viral mediated autoimmune response. And I've had the pleasure of speaking to experts all across the world over the past almost 2 years, starting with, I think, Professor Shi in China in March 2020. So I've had a fascinating insight. And as always, I have learned tremendous amounts from my guests. And today I have a quite an interesting group of guests, and I'll bring them in and let them introduce themselves. We have Wakim and Prakash. Wakim is from Germany, Prakash is from India, and they are both engineers. What in the world does that have to do with COVID-19? And so, what I'd like to do is just get them to introduce themselves. We'll dig a bit into their story and then look at what it is that they have come up with. So, we'll probably start with you, Wakim. Just let us know a little bit about yourself.
Yes, hello, good evening, good afternoon, good morning, everybody. My name is Joachim Gerlach, and I'm a retired businessman, and my former business was related to invent technical products that were used in the mainly automotive industry to improve intralogistics, roll on, roll off, special rail systems, just technical products. I have a lot of patents submitted for these products, and they are very successfully being used by many of the big manufacturers and their first-tier suppliers globally. I sold the company in 2013, so now 9 years ago, and retired to the island of Fuerteventura, where I got a little bit bored and also could observe that many people around me, more and more, including my wife, becoming chronically ill or having already several years of chronic illness, autoimmune diseases. And I was trying to figure out where that comes from. And the doctors, they are experts, they're for cardiology or for endocrinology or whatever, and they don't know so much about the causes. So I went deeply into the research, and it took me a year or two to come to the conclusion that most of the chronic illness we see today is driven by environmental factors like pesticides, herbicides, EMF radiation, lack of micronutrition, depleted soils, and very detrimental processes happening around us. And that this is one of the, let's say, a very big factor for these people turning ill. And so I started to dedicate my time to finance and help and research and build projects in organic farming, reforestation, food forest, rescuing, and so on, of all the varieties. So that's how I got into the field of healthcare from that direction.
Excellent, excellent. And we'll get Prakash to introduce himself as well. You're from India.
Yes. First, I'm a mechanical engineer with 25 years of experience into automotive and like home appliance, you name it, any product which is from a drawing board, bringing it to the market is what I was doing all my life. And as you said, as you asked, what in the world made two engineers to look for COVID? Okay, the engineer by a definition is someone who finds solutions for the problems of mankind. And we see there is no big problem than COVID. And so that's how we decided, okay, let us take it. And for us, our background is we take any product and look up for any problem and look for a product and solve it. So this was just another problem.
Excellent. That is a very good point. And I think this is the thing that I found most fascinating, and I'd encourage people, is that it doesn't matter if you are not from a medical background. If you are scientifically minded and you apply science in a consistent way, you can find a solution to almost anything. So in the same way, I don't think that my medicine limits me from building an innovative bridge, even though I don't know engineering. And so the principles are there. So you guys are both in engineering, but you didn't work together. How did you guys meet?
Because of this philanthropy projects of sustainability, organic farming. That includes, if you look at the big picture, also reforestation and energy technology. And so Prakash was guiding many foreign companies in India in developing green tech energy solutions. So that's how we got in contact, because initially, before we started on the COVID project, we wanted to introduce more projects and build bridges between Europe, the US and India on financing and getting these sustainability projects on the ground, which is still planned, but we had to interrupt for COVID.
And so, just because of my interest in cars, you did build automotive parts for things like the Porsche, didn't you, as well? What's that? I mean, how does that work? I'm just fascinated sometimes with that engineering side of things.
Okay, we did not build Porsches or cars. That was not our company was an industrial supplier. So what our task was to look at. Go into the factories, look at how they work, and see if we see potential. And that happened at Porsche, same as at Volkswagen, and especially in the pilot halls. That means that is the inner sanctum of, for example, Volkswagen and Porsche, is where they start assembling the new models that nobody has even seen, that will come out in some years. And then you look at the process of assembly line. You look at the process of logistics, of how to get the materials in the signaling system. The signaling is on the ground, roll and roll off, so that all the parts will get to the right point at the assembly line at the right time, and that there will be no forklift trucks driving around, there will be no excess material, etc. So increasing efficiency and designing and developing products that will be used in this high-tech environment.
Excellent. So, Prakash, where did your interest then come from with regards to COVID-19? What triggered it?
Fortunately, I'm connected with Joachim and a big team of more or less like 32 or 33 people globally, where we are working on we are actually blessed and kind of retired from business, made enough for our living and then enjoying the lives. But when the COVID problem struck, I don't know whether it is fortunate or unfortunate, we get to know and understand things much earlier than the world does. So it's like January 2020. We got to know how bad this would be. So we say like, okay, drop everything. First thing is, let us keep ourselves, our family and friends alive. So we started with a thing to solve our family problems, not for the global. But then Joachim made a formulation on the island, and I was not able to import that, and we were not able to help our friends overseas. And then the quantity was not small, so we wanted to do it in India. And so it happened. We didn't intend to do this. We just tried to solve our own personal problem, and we ended up solving for many.
Excellent, excellent. So we have here two guys who are comfortable, retired, done their business all their lives, and suddenly now you guys decide you're going to take on COVID, because this is just what you do. I mean, it's an incredible story that you guys would even risk doing this with your capital and with your time and with your effort. So tell me then, where did you start with your thinking about COVID-19? What approach did you take?
The first step was, of course, when we got the first data. I had some colleagues and scientists in the US that were able to compare the genomic sequences of the novel coronavirus, compare them with SARS-1 and MERS and other coronaviruses. And again, as engineers, we kind of said, everybody was jumping for spike proteins and antibodies, and we went like, no. You want to go and look for the backbone of that virus, which is the main protease, the 3CL, and see if there's a cold spot, something that has not changed. And so that was confirmed very early, like January 27th, we had the confirmation that the 3CL main protease, like the backbone of the virus, was conserved and a little bit, but not really significantly mutated. So the next step was then to see, is there any information out there in the research journals on what kind of research had been done on SARS and MERS, what helped there to break the backbone of that virus. And there was quite a lot there. Because MERS was almost 18 years before. SARS was 18 years before. So Chinese and other scientists had kind of checked already which molecules could block it. So that was the first step, and that's what we did also on the island in Spain. We got these materials, extracted them, built a makeshift laboratory very much to the pleasure of my wife in one of her apartments and started working. And that was more like really for us and families and friends and people on the island, just like in case that thing would hit hard. And it was mainly an antiviral, like it would be weighted much more as a antiviral medication than what we have now. And Prakash and me were all the time in contact. And then I said, can we send that to India? Can we import it? And no, it was put into a liquor officially. So it was not possible to bring that to India. And then in the meantime, we were already getting more information on that little bugger. And so many more requirements were like coming out. So coming back again to an engineering approach, that means like you're looking first of all, if you look at any problem, the first thing you have in mind is the people using that product or the people you want to help to solve a problem. In our case, it's the patient interest. That has to be on top of everything. And then you have to see that I'm not a biologist, neither is Prakash. So we have to first define what does this product have to do. And that is according, of course, of what our findings were, what the disease development and the conditions are reflecting. And so we don't need to be biologists or virologists to do that. We just need to have these people around us and tell them, please, what we want them to look at and what are the requirements of what we want to do. Mm-hmm. And that was the initial approach.
And so in terms of how did you decide on the products that you are going to go for? Any thoughts with that, Prakash?
Okay. As an engineer, the approach is when we looked at this problem and we started knowing about this, I can tell you practically every 1 hour, we used to get some new information that this virus has this feature, and means every 1 hour we were getting obsolete what we thought. So we realized we are at war. So we took a military approach. One is defending ourselves, attacking the virus, and then repair the damage. And when we want to go for a war, we don't take a sniper rifles. We didn't take a precision medicine approach. If you look at our formulation, it has 9 molecules, and together the API is 4,512 milligrams. Practically, I think, unheard of. But then when we are at war, we wanted to have some cannons, some rocket launcher, a battle tank, and then a laser gun. So this is how the approach was. And we are happy that it is proving right now. The more we know, right now, more or less 99 drug target pathways are documented and connected to COVID. And we are fortunate and lucky, the 9 chosen one, at least 4, 5 or few of them are still holding the ground.
So here is a question then. What made you select? How did you work out what products you were going to use as your primary target? So you said you used 9 products. So what about all the other hundreds of products? Why didn't you include those?
Yeah, it is. I was already, as I did the research on all the environmental damage and how to maybe counteract these kind of conditions, I was already familiar with the idea of using dietary supplements or phenolic compounds, or as you can say, natural molecules. There were several reasons why we went in that direction. One, of course, is also time to patient. If you want to do a pharmaceutical product, let's say from a chemical substance, you cannot do that in less than 3 years. It's impossible. So in a pandemic, just by itself, that is excluded from the options. So we had to go for a nutraceutical approach because of also the time to market, time to patient. It had to be quick and safe. So that was the first requirement. And then if you look at what at the you roughly have like 30,000 hits if you look for phytochemicals, flavonoids, and phenolic compounds in the research databases. Some of them are double, so you can bring that down to maybe 5 million papers on natural molecules. So there's a vast amount of information out there on all natural molecules which are known to have some therapeutic effects. That's around 8,000 molecules. So of course we didn't know which ones to take from the beginning on. So because if you start to develop a product, again, you take the requirement. So if I wouldn't do a car, and I would have to climb a mountain, go through a river, go on this highway, take the whole family, go in the snow, go in the desert, and so might probably end up with a very strong SUV. And so the same here. So you had to take the requirements of what kind of mechanisms need to be addressed. And so that was the starting point, and we developed a kind of a matrix with, in the beginning, it was not like now 100, it was around 40, 35, and maybe 10 of them were the top priority pathways we wanted to cover. And then you run that on these databases using AI technology. We had friends at MIT that can do that. So they helped us. We had an incredible amount of help pro bono from experts from all sides. And so we could then run these molecules, because how do you filter out a manageable amount of molecules out of 8,000 compounds? That means you have to have some grit on how to do that. And I don't know if other companies do that. I think not to that degree. That was another, let's say, engineering approach to really take all the requirements, take all the molecules, run it against each other, and then filter out. And then these nuggets that were left over, then you go into greater detail. And we can come to that later when you were asking, why do you have so much of this and not more of this? Yeah, but that was the biggest work that took us until middle of April, more or less. But already with ongoing other trials that Prakash was monitoring in India, animal trials, synergistic molecule trials, toxicity studies that we did in the preclinical trials, plus having a very large amount of computational analysis, which other biologists, Amrit did in India, to at least see more or less what these molecules do with the proteins, with the virus, with the host receptor cells, with inflammatory conditions, and the other required drug targets.
So that's fascinating. Now, I mean, I'm trying to get my head around. I'm trying to flip this in the other way. This would be the equivalent of there being something like a major flood. We're looking to our engineers to build bridges and ships. And I decide that as a medic, I am going to design a ship that would even be better than what the engineers have done. That's an absolutely incredible amount of confidence. Prakash, what made you so sure that this would work?
Uh, First of all, if you look at my background, it is completely different and diverse fields. First of all, the upbringing and the culture and the group. Globally, we are a team of around 97, 96 people, and most of these guys they don't know the word impossible. We know whether it is impossible or difficult when we try and do it. We really didn't bother whether it is possible, whether we will be able to do a pharmaceutical product or this. We just saw the problem, and we saw the problem of century. It is a opportunity and big problem of our lifetime. And we said, let's go for it, man.
Wow. No, I mean that's probably the most fascinating thing with all of this is that you guys were confident enough that you would go for it, knowing all of the intricacies and knowing that you would have to learn on your feet and applying the engineering principles as to how to come up with something. Okay, so let's break it down a little bit more. I'm going to bring up your chart here. This was probably, let me see if I can just put this on full screen. Yeah, so this here is your thinking, which eventually came out. At which point did you have this kind of flow chart? How long did it take you in the initial phases to get to this point?
except for the hypersensitivity part being a single, let's say, phase of the disease, and not like something else, like some inflammatory cytokine or some smaller kind of pathway. This whole thing was pretty clear after 6 to 8 weeks into the development. That was the basis for our drug target pathway structure. And the phase, if you look at the different boxes, starting from the upper left corner, phase 1, the viral phase, and then going into the hypersensitivity phase. So that phase was added later, after we learned from you guys and from Dr. Shankarachetti. We knew that mast cells and histamine play a role, but we didn't know how important that role would be. So mast cell activation was in the mix right from the start. Already at the 12th of February, it was a big point in the drug target pathway. This is to prevent mast cell activation. But I was not clear about the fact that you could stop disease severity with just like giving antihistamines and blocking mast cell activation, that it would be such an important pathway. I was not aware of. But the rest was pretty clear from the beginning on. Also, what maybe we added later was the immunodeficiency resulting from COVID-19 infections. But the organ damage and the autoimmunity resulting and all these things, they were clear from the beginning on, pretty much, yes.
Mm. And so you use this framework to then come up with the products that you are going to use to manage the disease. And so so you then put this together, you use your connections with MIT, you did all your database breakdown. What then happened? Because you then have to take this concept and make it into something that is tangible. How did that work?
That is Prakash's work. Prakash was the one that got the nuts and bolts and everything on the Indian side, from early development, from early research all the way to the finished product that we have in our hands. That is what he's really good at, and he did a fantastic job on that.
So you pulled all the things together, and so what I want to do is, I'm just particularly interested in the breakdown of what you have got in the product. And so what I had done is, when I realized I was going to talk to you, I started to dig at it from my research point of view, where I think the targets are with regards to COVID-19. So let's look at what's in it. So this here is 50 milliliters of a drink, and it has it has these things in it. Is that right?
Correct. It has 9 ingredients, and it was not always meant to be a suspension. I mean, we had to also, from the pharmacological side of things, we had many different options that we had to evaluate, and that we went and discussed with contract manufacturers and pharmacologists in the early stage of development. We were thinking even about lozenges or a nasal spray, and you know that the way how you deliver these molecules was then in a further down the road. So what we ended up here is now a suspension. And maybe Prakash, you want to explain that, because you built that really in the end and made that happen with all the raw material suppliers and formulation development in India with all the teams at Tirupati.
Yeah, so why did you go for suspension rather than a tablet?
A suspension is a good way to get these molecules floating in the suspension, stabilized, and have increased the bioavailability. There are other reasons. Some things we cannot talk about. They're a little bit our secret on how to get this incredible bioavailability that we could get from this product, that even very experienced medical practitioners are telling us this is not natural. It must be synthetic the way it works. So there are some things that we don't want to talk about why it's in a liquid suspension form, but it has shown to be the best way. And even though we have big problems of shipping it internationally, it took Prakash months to get it accepted with DHL Express, because it's a liquid, and so the bottles, they were tested in a lower pressure chamber. They dropped them, they burned them, they did everything to it, and so just to make sure that there's no problem. So actually, we used a very disadvantaged way of packing it, again under the idea the product has to be the best possible in the patient's interest. and not for us now to have cheaper logistics or cheaper manufacturing costs. And so that was the idea why we went into a suspension. Plus, you want to have a muco-adhesive effect in the mouth where the virus is replicating. And many of these molecules are known for their muco-adhesive effect, at least 2 of them, and they're the most potent antiviral. So you want to keep them in the mucus layer in the mouth to slow down virus replication. And
Yeah,
so
I noticed that Prakash wanted to say something, so I just paused you there a minute, Joachim. Yeah, go ahead, Prakash.
Uh, Even as engineers, we were putting down, first of all, look at the problem, put all the possible options without evaluating on the table and start evaluating. So when it comes to formulation development, I got a list of molecules from Joachim, and he was communicating on behalf of the scientific team. And I didn't even knew the spellings of these molecules when we started. So as it is, I started looking for who supplied this, contacted them. And when we started sourcing, from the day one we had in a mind, we have to do this for our masses. So anything which is like if I get something from the shell of a shark, then I would not do that. So we even on the fly, the formulation was changing and things like that. And finally we came up with its product, and then we approached, as my experience is with Volvo and other automotive things, I am experienced in selecting suppliers for materials, for making it, and then doing the trials and everything necessary for that. And one more thing I would like to add into this, I think that is this, Philip, it is not that we got to this straight away. Huh? We were not lucky and fortunate. We as we wanted to solve this problem and give a solution to the world as soon as possible. And let us start with the families and friends. When we identified the molecules, we started with taking the supplements available together. These are not new things. Supplements are available. We got all these supplements together and tried doing that. But then we realized they were not much effective, and the bioavailability was worst. And you cannot feed someone a handful of supplements 3 or 5 times a day. And that's why in our process, all the other formulation things, it is not that I can show you a big room where we have all the other formulations tried which didn't work. Either they failed in animal trials or they failed in practicality. They were not good for the market. So this is the thing which survived everything. And finally, got onto the
Okay, so let's break it down a little bit, and I'm interested to see. So I'm going to bring up one of your charts here. So you've got here, you broke down the things you're targeting. So say, for instance, you're targeting the protease, and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, all 9 of these products target the viral protease. Okay.
Yeah.
Now, but this is based, I guess, on serum levels. You wouldn't have been able to get this in the nose. So it would also depend on how high the concentrations were. Okay, the spike glycoprotein inhibitors, what does that mean?
Okay, these are binding molecules to the spike, to the RBD, which we kind of try to keep track of. These are actually changing, you know yourself. So the RBD is constantly mutating. So let's say that was a collateral benefit. When we did the research on all these molecules, these came up for free. They are not our main target. We put them in there just to be completely documented. But that is, for me, the least important part. Most important is these 3CL protease and actually the RBD ACE2 binding, which was actually a good thing. What happened there was an Indian university working for the pharmaceutical industry, and they tried to find an inhibitor to stop the binding of RBD to ACE2. And then I couldn't believe it. On the bottom of the whole study, they had all the different molecules, chemical molecules, most of them, and repurposing of antiviral drugs. And the comment was, to our big concern, hesperidin has proven to be the best of all antiviral components to block that pathway. Yeah, so you can see that there is we also were benefiting from comparisons from pharmaceutical companies, and they would sometimes take these natural molecules as a reference, and they couldn't even beat them. Yeah, so what you see there, the viral structured protease inhibitors, why you have 9 molecules up there at the 3CL level, is because that was our main priority. So we had like 6 or 7 main priorities. One of them was the 3CL protease, furin inhibition, which we can look at later, mast cell degranulation, anti-inflammatory, and organ regenerative properties were on top of the list. Everything else that came in was important, but was not a must-have. And so you can see that the molecules are underneath the first row. The molecules are pretty much divided equally between all these pathways. So it's covering them all to a certain degree. You also have to take into account that not all molecules, natural molecules, are not staying the same in that shape as you put them in your mouth. They will already be started to be metabolized in the saliva, with the saliva, most of them. And then once they go through your digestive system, they are being broken up by the gut bacteria and are broken up into many metabolites. So actually you have to take into account, when you look at an original substance, you have to also take into account what will it be metabolized into. Yeah, so that is really an important factor, because many in vitro trials are not really telling you what that will do in nature. Let me explain one thing that is really important for natural molecules, for people that don't know it.
Yes.
I've been watching nature for many years. I lived 10 years in the rainforest in Central America. So I have learned to appreciate nature and to see that there is no engineer in the world, no developer, no chemist, no geneticist that can even dare to match nature and God's given creation. And so what you can see with these molecules, these molecules get into interaction with our cells, with our organism. And our organisms know these molecules for millions of years. So they've been around. They're not chemical molecules. They're not recognized by the body as something foreign. And so you can trust nature, and that can be proven, because it will assimilate in the body region. Any of these molecules will assimilate in the body region where it's needed. There have been a lot of testing on that, and you can see the serum level was not significant. But if you do a biopsy in the cells where there's a disease, and then you will find that they will accumulate there and then do the job required that they need to do, like an Army Corps of Engineers.
I'm going to ask you the question that Piero has just said. We need clinical trials. You know how medics think as well. No, so this is a nutraceutical, so it's not a prescription drug, but just the same, the medical world will say, well, you may say that, but does it mean anything? How does it stand up to the test?
Prakash, you want to talk about the test, about the clinical trials? You set them all up and had them done in India?
Yeah, I would cover the functional aspect, not the scientific aspect, because I understand a little less in that. But to start with, when we wanted to evaluate the molecules, the in silico or the modeling test, we have done 570, and all are available, and we can put it on the website. So now we have evaluated 570 studies and simulation when we started with in silico study. Then we went to the selected one, the chosen. It was like an elimination round. From this, some molecules survived, and we went on to the animal testing. We did 43 or 44 total. One was for a patent, but 44 animal trials with various combinations and possibilities. We mentioned we wanted to make things which is very safe. Like one of the requirements I would bring up, like the requirement when we laid out while designing the product, it was keeping the patient and doctor in mind. So we wanted to develop something which will be given to patient right from when it is onset of symptoms to someone who is on a ventilator. So that's why we were covering all these things has to be done, lot of testing and animal. And later we did phase 2B clinical trial, and the number of biomarkers we did, I think we were in June 2020, we started the clinical trial, and I think we were the first or second company who was doing clinical trial with acute COVID and long COVID. We were knowing about long COVID back then, and we wanted to see the biomarkers, and we have documented that starting June 2020. We have
Wow,
all the
wow.
data we can share. Most of the data is available on the website.
Mm.
Sometimes we are criticized, guys, are you trying to impress the world? Are you putting your all the things and secrets? Say, Philip, we did some product, we are going to this thing, we put some money, we are doing at it, but it was not a commercial mind, or we are sharing the research. Maybe people can learn from this, and tomorrow someone can come up with better product than what we did. And we are
Hmm.
sharing everything on the website.
Well, this is part of the interesting question. Is that I was just showing here some of the trials. I guess some of them are still under peer review, but you've done these studies, these trial studies, looking at specific markers, TNF, interleukin 6, C-reactive protein. So these are good markers, especially with regards to well, let me rephrase this. I think that anybody will struggle to get drugs in to treat COVID. I mean, we can see what has happened across the world. Nobody outside of steroids, people don't tend to use anything else, and so therefore, it seems though that these products are very, very well suited for the chronic inflammation that we see with long COVID. And as you mentioned there, the fact that you are seeing even in the animal studies improvement with regards to long COVID, that was fascinating. When did you guys clue into that?
The long COVID was like, we didn't have any patients at the time in India having long COVID, but we had received reports about persisting conditions after COVID, like even in asymptomatic or mild cases, that they would still experience some serious long COVID issues. And so the first thing we could still do in India was to make sure that while we did the clinical trials on these patients, was 124 patients in this phase 2 trial, WHO registered, so we could at least monitor them after the acute phase for another 45 days and take again 50 biomarkers and observations after these 45 days, as to see, would we see a prolongation of symptoms? Would these people have a relapse, which also could be observed later in India to a very strong degree, that people would kind of get over COVID, but a month later would come down with a bacterial pneumonia or other really severe conditions, sometimes black fungus and these kind of things. So we wanted to know, how does the patient look like 45 days after? And that was really a good outcome. We took in the whole clinical trial, we took about 20,000 different data points from the beginning to 45 days after, in the treatment group as well as in our control group, whereas the control group was getting medication. They got hydroxychloroquine, they got remdesivir, okay, forget about that, but they got ivermectin, they got all kinds of normal medication, which were kind of in the Indian treatment protocol. And the other group got our medicinals on top of all that. So it's also not that we can only be a single standing nutraceutical treatment. We were from the beginning on, we were like not finding the conflict between allopathic and homeopathic and natural therapies. There's a big discussion in India between Ayurveda fraction and the normal medical fraction, and we thought that is not very good and it's completely unnecessary. It's not a question of pharmaceutical products or nutraceutical approach. It is the question of where to use what and in which combination.
Okay, I'm going to just share something here. So, what I did is that this is for those who well, I don't usually share this, but this is what I usually do when I'm doing my research. I will take a product and I will then break it down into pieces.
Mm-hmm.
And here is, I know that a central part of long COVID is this macrophage or monocyte.
Hmm.
And so what I then did is I broke down your product into pieces. So quite a few of them are saponins. There is piperine, hesperidin, quercetin, curcumin. And so what I was looking at was how many studies were there with regards to, say, for instance, when you look at the saponins, you would then see a bunch of 126 papers that look at the way how it works with settling down inflammation, endothelial lining activity, and so on. And so this is how I approach research in terms of breaking things down and then looking at where do they work, how
Hmm.
does it work, and why does it work. And what I noticed was that almost all of them, and this is why I broke down each one, when it came to the combination with macrophages and monocytes, all of them were having good effects with regards to these specific products. So, like this one here, human monocyte mobility and adhesion is reduced. This one affects the human dendritic cell differentiation. So I'm seeing the pattern here that quite a number of these products work on the monocyte pathway. So, from my point of view, I thought that was extremely important. Anything that will settle down the macrophage activation that can happen in long COVID, long hauler situation is going to improve symptoms. But the question still remains, how long does it last? Is it a temporary effect that it does this inflammatory settle down and then within a few weeks of stopping, the inflammation restarts? That's one of the other questions. Is it temporary or is it more of a longer term impact that some of these nutraceuticals would have?
That depends on which angle you're looking at here. We have 200 symptoms and many different conditions in acute and long COVID. So some of them will be short-lived, and others will be taking a much longer time. And so, depending on the patient's condition, we are working with several renowned doctors that do treat long COVID. So we provide the product as a nutraceutical to their patients, and then we get the feedbacks through the doctors from blood biomarkers and from patient reports. And I think you don't have to take that forever, and it's not possible because this is a pretty potent let's say nutraceutical, and you cannot take that at all times. Even drinking too much water can have side effects. So let's take it easy on this. So what I think is in the acute phase, it's good to go for a normal course of 14 bottles. That means 1 bottle per day, and then see the results. Take some blood markers, look at the patient's conditions, evaluate, and take it from there. And if necessary, do another course. In long haulers, might be necessary to drag it on for even a longer time, but give it breaks in between so that the body can recover. That you don't want to give too much pressure on kidneys or liver or other organs that have to deal with debris or with toxic materials, because you're also killing parasites. You're opening up. You're breaking down cells. But when you clean up an area, you also create rubbish. And so that has to be brought out. Yeah. So now speaking again as an engineer, so you have to give the body a chance to get that out, and then you start again, and you go to the next step, and then you observe it. And I don't think that you can take this over such a endlessly extended period. No, but I think that you will be
Somebody
happy
has
with it.
brought Yeah, I was just saying that somebody has brought a challenges here. There are much more out there than supplements, as there are many medicinal plants in formula tailored to every patient, which also give excellent results.
Yes.
Yes, and I agree. What do you say with regards to that? Because you did look at almost all the products out there. You know, what
Prakash,
made you leave out those? Yeah.
okay, before us, and while we were doing our clinical trials, Prakash, how many Ayurveda herbs, whole plant remedies were tested in clinical settings against COVID-19? How many hundreds?
There are hundreds of things tested and submitted, and government and people were testing in India. Like if you talk about herbs in India, you drive 50 kilometers and they talk about the local herb doing this.
So you guys tested out all of these
No,
products?
no,
No?
we watched the other ones test it and fail.
Ah, I see. And now, here's an interesting thing. So there is always the principle of synergistic effects.
Yes.
So if you were to take each one of those products on its own and you just use higher doses of it, why would that not work as well? Say, for instance, quercetin is a pretty good all broad spectrum nutraceutical. Why wouldn't that be just as effective?
Yeah, I mean, you can take one of those. Look, to be honest, I can send you the slides. I was holding a lecture on February 23rd last year, at the beginning of the pandemic, and three things were already certain to be included in the protocol. That was vitamin D3, zinc, vitamin C, and quercetin. That's a no-brainer. Now, this is, let's say, the baseline that you can cover. It will do some good. Yes, absolutely. If you look at all the pathways that quercetin covers, it's fine. But then if you take a supplement, we did the animal trials with powder in water. We had different kind of raw materials, or Prakash ordered all kinds of molecular sizes. Because the size is also different, important. What molecular size are you looking at with these supplements? What kind of purity? What plant does it come from? And has it been extensively also checked that it's not having some synthetics in there, and not even talking about heavy metals and pesticides. So yes, you can, if you have a high quality quercetin, you might want to, you can eat the capsule. But like we explained before, you can also take all 9 supplements. Maybe even drink a tincture with licorice and mix all that. I did that before I could get medicinals into Europe, because it was not available in the first 8 months of us working with it. And I took, I could show you the shelf. It's all there. So I tried that, and it's not the same. You don't get the right balance. And then we found in animal trials that it's not as efficient. The way it has been done, and with the bioenhancement, let's say, engineering that we did to it, it works pretty impressive. But of course, yes, you can take these supplements, yes. Why not?
Here's an important question that Lisa has asked. So since all these ingredients are natural, is this able to be had without a prescription? Because that's a quite a significant limiting factor.
Prakash, can you answer that? You are sending out everyday product.
Yes, we got this. Philip, first I'll come to the thing before we discuss, just few minutes back on this. Most important thing is like taking 9 molecules and putting them together, or suspension. 9 molecules in the declared label, what you see is part of the deal. Okay, there is something into this which is our business secret, which is we did a lot of trials to get the bioavailability, and we actually really want people to make a comparison and report. I have many 2,000 plus people have tried everything else, and finally this, and then we have people coming out and about the availability and performance. If you look at our website, my confidence of helping 2,000 people is also radiating from our website, where we say money back guarantee, no questions asked.
So do people need a prescription though? That's a good. Does it have? No.
No, this is a nutraceutical. It is clearly bold written, not for medicinal use, and this doesn't need a prescription. People can buy this like vitamin C or zinc or whatever they buy.
Interesting. Okay, here is one thing that stood out to me that when I looked at your slides, this stood out to me as really interesting. What was it that happened here?
Yeah, that was during the clinical trials. In this slide, I did not show the control group, which were also treated. They had no improvement at all in the first 12 days. So what happened here is that on admission in our treatment group for Medicinals 9, which were 64 patients, more than 93% had abnormal lung X-ray findings, which include also ground glass opacity. And so after 12 days of treatment, that was brought down to I can't see that right now on the last slide, but it should be by 75% or more. Whereas in the normal treatment group that received anti-inflammatories and ivermectin, etc., there was no improvement at all. This group improved. It improved later, but I found this very significant that you can do that within 12 days, and that is not the only time this got reported. We had a lot of patient reports, even in very severe conditions, and they reported after 6 days to 10 days significant improvements on their lung scans, on especially ground glass opacity. So obviously these molecules seem to not only stop disease progression, they're also able to help the body to regenerate and rebuild tissue, especially in the lungs. And so I think that had also to do with maybe the inflammation that was happening, but not only. I think it is a senolytic process of building up new tissue and regenerating the organ.
So here's a question, because what we're seeing nowadays, and we've seen a lot of it happen with hydroxychloroquine or ivermectin, or when even vitamin D. Vitamin D has not been promoted by any health organization, which is quite remarkable in the context of a significant pandemic. So there does seem to be a natural tendency that we underestimate the value of natural compounds. If it's not a prescription, if it's not a drug that has been produced, we tend to discount it. What have you found in your experience with that? Have people turned up their noses at this because it isn't a drug?
Look, of course, if you look at us as a company and who we are, not coming from the fields, not having a PhD in pharmacology or in molecular biology, there is, of course, a problem of acceptance, and the product may be as good as it ever can be. People will be skeptical because, first of all, it's a nutraceutical, and who are we? So they don't know that we were surrounded by highly professional groups of experts, and that the people behind that who are producing it for us are some of the best companies in the Asian Pacific region, that are huge companies, and that we have very big teams in formulation development working on that. And we did everything possible. We were doing, actually, this is not a nutraceutical, it's almost built like a phytopharmaceutical, from the scientific rationale all the way to formulation development. So yes, we have, of course, that is a big skepticism we are facing, and that we have to overcome. And it's actually a pity, because this product is really good and it works. It's safe and it works. So these are the two main things that we have to, we could realize in making that product in the patient's interest. And vitamin C, D, and zinc, I recommend since end of January 2020 to everybody. I said, please take that at all times, with or without medicinals. And that is the baseline. And if you look at the data from D3 alone, that is almost half the rent. So perfect. I couldn't agree more.
You were going to say something, Prakash.
We had a resistance close to 3.5 months back when we started. Initially, I was talking to people, and anyone who showed interest, I was sending them the boxes without even waiting for them to pay or think about that. And it happened like close to 300 or 350 people we sent boxes. And I am happy to say each one of them, when they tried, they paid, and then they are now sharing. We are standing now on number like 2,000 plus patients have ordered. We have done zero marketing, nothing. It is only people using it and referring it. It is like growing organically. It's organic product growing organically.
The thing that interests me most about it is the fact that I think that we're going to face an avalanche or a tsunami of immune problems that is even when we get past the pandemic, there will be a lot of long-term injuries that need real solutions. And this is as my focus is going on long COVID and some of the mechanisms behind it. The big question or the big challenge is to find enough stuff that we can use effectively and safely that will actually really make a difference to people's health. So yeah, so it's coming through at about the right time. I mean, I think that in terms of, I think probably your initial vision of using it for COVID-19 severe illness, I think that, as I said, the mere fact that there are so many other things that we haven't used, you almost have no chance. But it seems almost as if nobody is interested in long COVID. We ignore it. We let it pass. And I think that's where we have a huge challenge ahead to try and find solutions. So I was quite reflective on looking at the breakdown as to, I'll show you this. This is what caught my attention when you looked at the impact that it has on, as you said, lung tissue, myocardial tissue, well, CK, probably not as much. Um, um, Protecting against cardiac fibrosis could be relevant with regards to cardiomyopathy. Intestinal inflammation. Now, this is the big one. These two, with regards to intestinal inflammation, gut bacteria, this is where I think people have underestimated how important it is for us to find solutions. And so anything that does work to protect this is very valuable. Again, the question that I still have is this something that people need to take long term? Because that completely changes the angle. If this is a short term um, impact, meaning that somebody takes it for a few weeks, even a month, and then they're back to normal or even better than normal, that's great. But if they need to have to be taking this long term in order to maintain their health, that's a problem. Any thoughts on that?
Yes, maybe let me highlight two things. First of all, we are dealing now with a lot of long haulers and doctors treating long COVID patients, amongst which some of them you know. And so before we look at any patient report, or when they ask us sometimes for advice because of drug-drug interactions, we can do some research, etc. And so first you have to distinguish between people that get long COVID and they were healthy, pretty healthy before, and they just got COVID and then got stuck with long COVID. Or you have people that have preconditions that were already chronically ill before they got COVID, and then COVID came on top. So if you want to treat long COVID, and you expect us also our nutraceutical and some other small interventions to take care of the underlying illness that they had before, that needs to be separated. That is one thing. And the second, of course, is that many people have already a compromised, let's say, gut biome. They have already leaky gut. They have already intestinal inflammation ongoing. Maybe they're not even aware of that. And then COVID comes on top and pushes them over. And you know, you're an expert in autoimmune disease, but I think that we will meet anyhow in future discussions, because autoimmune disease is actually starting in the gut, most of it. Yeah, and with leaky gut, and then hypersensitivity, gluten intolerance, and so on. And so that is where we were very familiar with how to look at that before COVID hit. And so you don't need to take medicinals at all times. We have a treatment protocol which you showed before, where on one side is our product, and on the other side you see different supplements, probiotics. We are in contact now with one of the biggest producers in the world for probiotics, and they are tailoring a probiotic for our product. Now, because we need several angles to be covered here. The bacteria are the little workers, and we provide the raw materials. So we want both to be in good condition in the intestines, number one. Mm-hmm. Number two, if you have a disbalance in your biome and you have too many detrimental bacteria and not enough beneficial bacteria, then also you will have inflammation. Everything else in your body will be affected. And the leaky gut, actually, you can treat that also with other substances. We have some of them even in development. So I think that you don't have to take medicinals for that. For a long-term treatment of intestinal inflammation, balancing your gut bacteria and protecting your tight junctions, There's plenty of other products. They don't need to take medicinals. Medicinals is more in the acute phase and bringing back your body into the homeostasis. And you also have to add, according to the patient's condition, other medication or other supplements. And that is in the hands of the medical professional. We are not medical professionals.
Yes. So the other thing, as we're coming to the wrap-up point, and the other thing I wanted to highlight that caught my attention because of my interest in dementia is this. Well, I think Dr. Stephanie Seneff, if I could ever get in contact with her, would be quite an interesting discussion. And she is extremely concerned about the neurodegenerative problems that can happen with regards to spike proteins. And again, that could be another tsunami that's coming. You guys think that you can help this as well, is that right?
According to the information we have, look, we could not do we couldn't get any results in our clinical trials on neurological markers and long-term results on you need also like much bigger cohorts to look at that. But what these molecules have been used for in the past and what they're reported to do is especially in the neurodegenerative and prevention of neurodegeneration, that is one of the strongest sides. And I've been doing some more research on it lately, and you see that also on the drug target pathway list that we sent you, that this is very strong. So there are several angles of this. Let's say that the formation of prion disease, so the amyloid aggregation that can happen through the S1 subunit getting into the brain is of concern. And I don't want to talk in any angle about where the source of the spike protein might come from infection or other sources. So, but to make it clear, the spike protein is the problem. It's the toxin, and you don't want that in your brain at all costs. Mm-hmm. So how does it get into the brain? If you go to the next slide after that, you see that this is now playing out with Omicron, which is actually a pretty good information for the listeners, because it is I'm sorry to say that, I don't want to rain on anybody's parade, but Omicron can play a big role in causing long COVID, and especially in the neuroinflammatory field. Okay, what happened with Omicron? I have to go back one step more. So SARS-CoV-2, the main gain of function it has is a furin cleavage site on the spike protein between the S1 and S2 subunit, which will use the human enzyme and furin for cleavage of cutting these two pieces. And so that is the most important gain of function, or the most important tuning that this virus has done to become so dangerous. And so in Omicron, the furin cleavage site is not one, it's now 4 or 3 at least. So that means it will be much more prone to use furin for cleavage. So furin is an enzyme that is exhibited strongly on the cell surface of people that are chronically ill, diabetes 2, inflammation, etc. So now you have Omicron using that furin stronger than anything else before. And there were other tests to see if a spike protein that has a furin cleavage site, only these spike proteins, like from the SARS-CoV-2, can pass the blood-brain barrier and get into the neuronal system. So now with Omicron, the ability of crossing the blood-brain barrier might be much higher. And we can see that already on some reports on neurological symptoms and neuropathies that we get on Omicron cases. So whatever it is, maybe from these injections or from an infection, you want to do something. My daughter is down with Omicron at this moment, and I'm not on the island, so I'm very worried. And I spent hours on the phone because everybody was not taking it so serious, and I made sure that she takes whatever is necessary to prevent any kind of neurological infection or inflammation. So that is, I think, one of the strongest sides of medicinals, what we can do here. Yes.
Fascinating stuff. So, well, I mean, I think it was tremendous, and I wish you guys all the success with this, because there are a lot of people across the world who are struggling every day to find solutions that will get them back even to close to normal. So, what would be your parting words? And I'll ask you one at a time. Joaquin, what are your parting words?
My parting words are that we need to maintain our hope and our confidence that we can overcome this crisis, although the public measures that we are facing are not really the smartest and the best in our best interest. But so my words would be to, it doesn't have to be our product, but have something at home for early treatment, whatever you can get in your country. And if you want to look at our product, that would be fine. I can assure you that we did the best possible job in ensuring that it's safe and that it works really on what the science is promising here. And yeah, I hope everybody is going to stay safe. Don't underestimate Omicron, and stay away from the virus or any spike protein if you can.
Excellent. And what about you, Prakash? Any thoughts?
I request everyone to take this little bugger very, very seriously. Do your own research, look for credible inputs, and read. Our lives last 2 years is like 250, 300 pages a day minimum. And still we are reading and learning. And I think that is how we will survive. We will fight it out and we will prevail. But we have to be smart, we have to be alert and take things seriously. Okay, here you can take things seriously or be a little bit careful and vigilant, but that's not bad in case it's like as I mentioned, it's a war analogy. If you suspect there is an enemy and you hide and you protect or you carpet bomb it and clear it, and if you find nothing, just a collateral damage, little bit, you lose a small tree or house. Be very careful and listen to the people, read and do your own research.
Excellent. Great. Thank you very much, gentlemen, for having that with us. And I'm sure that all our listeners learned a lot and learned the value of us not underestimating how valuable nutraceuticals are in this long fight that we have with this pandemic. I'll ask you guys, gentlemen, to just hang on for me as I do our outro here. And thank you to everyone, and look forward to sharing some more interesting conversations in the near future. Have a great evening, everyone, and thank you.
Thank you, Philip, for